Welcome to Snack Time Chats, a collection of short, podcast-style recordings designed to promote best practice and encourage knowledge exchange throughout the ELC sector. Each session will be led by the Improvement Service, who will be joined by a different guest speaker for each recording. It is undeniable that daily, high-quality outdoor play experiences have a direct and positive impact on children's development. As many young children are now spending an increased number of hours in ELC, there is a need for all settings to consider the quality and frequency of their outdoor play provision as a priority. Many settings already make good use of access to the outdoors, not only through their immediate outdoor space, but also through ensuring access to their local woodlands, parks and green spaces. Today I am joined by Kirsty Mahindra, an Early Years Quality Improvement Officer in East Dunbartonshire Council, to talk more about embracing and developing outdoor play opportunities for settings, both old and new. Kirsty, thank you so much for joining me today. Now, I know through discussions that you and I have had in the past, outdoor play and STEM are things that you are very passionate about. So as we get started, I think it would be really good if you could give us a little bit of background into your own journey in discovering that passion for outdoor play and STEM, and how that has evolved and developed over the years in your time in settings, and how you have supported staff to come on that journey with you.
Okay. Hi everyone, my name's Kirsty Mahindra, as Emma said, and I have been leading centres for 15 years across East Dunbartonshire Council. I've most recently moved into a Quality Improvement Officer post in EDC, and with this post I'm going in to support centres to ensure quality across all areas of the curriculum. But my passion is for outdoor learning and for STEM, and I've done lots of work across all my centres over the years to develop this. So today I'm going to share my passion for outdoor learning and STEM, some of my experiences of developing outdoor learning in my centres over the years, and this has obviously developed and my skills have developed and been able to provide quality outdoor learning for children. Outdoor learning has obviously developed significantly with the expectation that all children spend daily time outdoors, and we've now got frameworks and guidance that support outdoor learning. I'm going to start with a timeline that's going to give you a bit of my experience across the years. We still have barriers and challenges, which I'll discuss, but you know, it's really important that children can see and explore and make sense of the world, and I'm going to chat about ways in which you can do this. So when I started 15 years ago managing centres, we didn't have in my centre any free outdoor access. The outdoor had to be planned, children were escorted there, you know, staff weren't stationed there at that point. I was first based in a voluntary partnership, so it was based in a church where we were packing up and setting up every day. We had a very small outdoor garden that was accessed by other people, but we kind of maintained it, we developed it so for our children, but it was just that the other community could access it that belonged to the particular church I was based in. I've also led in a private sector leading centre, early years centre, for a period of time before moving to the local authority, and that was at a time of transformative change where we were moving from 600 hours where it was a traditional nursery class with planned outdoor learning to extended day, extended year, and really developing that free flow access for children. And my most recent centre is a avant-garde state-of-the-art build to support with 1140 with that outdoor-indoor concept. So I have a wide range of experience across the sectors of having that really limited and difficult experience of trying to get children outdoors daily to having a centre that's really purpose-built. I've got lots of ideas of how you can develop your staff team, develop your outdoor environments, and really, you know, developing the experiences that children can get across the curriculum through accessing outdoors. So starting off with the voluntary partnership, as I talked about, it was the first centre that I'd been in to manage, so it was a small garden space. But I know that lots of settings still have that, where you're packing up and putting away. You don't have these open doors that you can access spaces. And at that time, we were required to plan. It wasn't as spontaneous as you might want it to be, but it's just making sure that children, that there's a plan for outdoor learning each day. Within our space at that time, we didn't have opportunities for risk-benefit play, but children were exposed to fresh air, they'd balanced curriculum opportunities, and they participated in things like eco-schools and some STEM experiences while they were out there, really giving the opportunity for them to make sense of the world, to exploring some of the, the natural resources that outdoors offers. But since then, obviously, thoughts about practice have developed. Government guidelines around daily access to outdoor learning have changed since then. We've got a different world with technology and digital access for young children, and it's just different opportunities that are out there. One way that we developed our area from being a voluntary partnership nursery was through lottery funding, and I'll speak to you more about some of the funding that I've applied for and been successful to develop my outdoor spaces as we move through the conversation.
Yes, thank you, Kirsty. It's just a very quick question, I suppose, really, before we move on. Now, you've mentioned that lack of a permanent outdoor play environment, and I'm sure you'll agree that that then takes away the opportunity for spontaneous outdoor play. But I wonder if you and the staff actually felt this was beneficial for the children, because they surely would have had different learning opportunities, albeit equally as important ones, to children who were in a setting with that permanent free flow setup.
They would benefit from that because they knew when outdoor was happening, they knew that it was happening every day. They also had that support from staff and encouragement from staff, from children that maybe necessarily wouldn't, venture outside. It kind of was part of the routine. They were encouraged to go if their key worker was there as well, particularly, that children would be, maybe more keen to go out with their key worker and explore that outdoor area. Whereas if you've got free flow access, sometimes you find that children have that opportunity all day every day, but you still got those wee ones that maybe don't, and then you've also got your wee ones that actually want to be out there all day, and that is how they learn. It's really making sure that they've got opportunities to be learning across the curriculum, regardless of where these children would naturally move to. But it is encouraging wee ones that wouldn't necessarily go outdoors to venture outdoors. And again, that's trying to tap into these children's particular interests and think, wow, come and see this, come and see what we've got outside today, and really encouraging that, because obviously we're in a more digital world. There's some children that maybe don't have the same outdoor opportunities that perhaps you and I would have had as young children, when you were outside playing. Some people just aren't outdoor people. They're just not people that would venture outdoors with their children if perhaps the weather's a bit adverse. And it's really changing that kind of mindset of the child when they're in there, and showing them the great opportunities that they've got. And I'll talk a wee bit more about that as we move forward with my experiences with barriers with parents, and encouraging wee ones to come out and staff the barriers with staff as well.
That's great. Thank you, Kirsty.
Okay, so when I moved on from the voluntary partnership, I moved into a private sector leading centre that already had free flow outdoor access. It was purpose built. There was lots of outdoor learning opportunities, and really the focus with that centre was ensuring quality of what was happening outdoors, because everything else was kind of set up already. It was purpose built for that. And there was lots of lovely practice that happened in there, and they had chickens, and children had lots of learning experiences within there that certainly I hadn't seen before, and I did learn from managing in that centre. But it really showed you the opportunity that children have if they're given that option of walking through a door, where they're not having to ask permission and they're coming in and out freely. And it was really building staff confidence in terms of the outdoor curriculum, I suppose, and using really the natural resources that you've got available to support children's learning and developing their skills across the curriculum. From there, I went to a local authority, and that was my first experience in local authority, and it was a centre that was attached to a school, and it was developing from a traditional nursery class to that extended day and year, and it was around the 600 hours. Funding was being introduced. So when I arrived, it was, you know, set times for outdoors. We did have staff resistance to that all-weather play and that free flow access and staff based outdoors, and we really had to work with staff to get them on board with the concept of free flow access. And you know, a lot of that was to do with, you know, looking at some of the frameworks, how we were actually going to do it and operationally as well, making sure that staff had the right clothing, you know, that they were getting support, and we had to build that up, you know. So we started off with staff being based outside for a week, and then once staff got into the swing of that, because they were leading outside for a week, then we would increase that to a fortnight. So it was baby steps for us. We did a test of change with children as well, just to monitor how many children are free flow accessing, with some of the work that we did, and you know, even the discussions at welcome time with the children, telling them what was happening outside, you know, planning with them about developing. Because the interesting thing about this local authority setting was it was predominantly a concrete playground with some grassy areas. When I arrived in 2015, and we worked really hard. We did a 3-year plan to develop the environment and the learning opportunities that were outside, and that all became part of that test of change and really getting the team on board. It's great if you've got someone that is interested in outdoor learning within your staff team, because that really does support that, but not everybody has that, and within centres I've had it, and then in some centres I've not, and it's been a bit harder. If you've got somebody that will lead and is keen to lead, then I would strongly encourage you to really, you know, buy into that with that staff member and really build them to bring other staff members along. I think providing training for your staff is key as well. Some of the training that we've accessed for our staff is forest schools, STEM training, and being part of that. We're part of the STEM Glasgow leadership, and I've had staff members out on doing some of those training events. Them having leadership roles and, you know, ownership of that, and, you know, responsibilities as well in terms of developing areas. And the training that goes along with that. So we've done things with play on pedals, woodwork training, literacy and numeracy too, and how you bring literacy and numeracy into your outdoor areas. Eco skills is great for outdoors as well, looking at, you know, recycling, looking after our garden creatures. We've done seed to table. And within that setting, we did a lot of work, and a lot of that was thanks to the commitment from the staff team, and, you know, them really getting on board with that. It was within their improvement plan for those 3 years, you know, getting our parents involved, with grandparents in. At that time, obviously, we could do stay and play and things like that, and that made that, you know, getting parents on board, because we did have resistance from parents as well, in terms of children using real tools. We had real bricks outside within our construction areas. So being able to bring parents in, and I know that's difficult at the moment, but really involving your parents in your plans really helps to get them on board, and them seeing that, you know, you're investing or you're fundraising so that the children have got the appropriate clothing for going outdoors and things like that, you know, gives them a bit of reassurance. And even a wee guidance note, or a, you know, a leaflet just explaining the benefits of outdoor learning and things like that, can help that. Obviously, we used to do, when we were allowed parents in the building, our curriculum evenings and things like that. And I know lots of people are doing things like that online, but looking at, you know, having a focus on outdoor learning, if that's something that you're trying to develop, really getting into that and giving parents the opportunity to do a bit of question and answer, helps to support parents getting on board with that too. So within that setting, we actually applied for the setting of innovation in 2018. I applied for that in the March. And we got notification that we were successful for that, with that application, in August 2018. So that was fantastic. It was great for the staff's morale. You know, they could see the work that we'd done there, but we'd also measured, you know, the impact on children, particularly some of our children that didn't want to participate in, you know, the kind of traditional types of activities, whether it was games or, you know, they wanted to be involved in woodwork and planting and, you know, they built a wildflower garden from scratch and things like that, you know, really interesting things that the children, as soon as they came in, they were like, I want to go out. I want to be building my fence for the wildflower garden, or I want to be out with my grandpa raking it up because they were doing all their own planting and things like that. So it's really, you know, building that enthusiasm in children. They come in, they've got a purpose that day, they know what they want to do, but we're also building in opportunities for literacy and numeracy, because they're measuring, they're using tools with their fine, you can assess their fine motor through, you know, through that media, that they're sewing things up, so they're building their understanding of safety and risk, and you know, it's all that measured risk benefit play and things like that. So you know, we really learned a lot through that project over 3 years, and getting the Setting of Innovation Award was just recognition of the work that the staff had put into that setting. So that was just a brilliant experience.
And that in itself, Kirsty, must have been a really wonderful moment for staff, I can imagine. Now, with these changes and successes, did you see an increase in parental buy-in to the outdoor learning environment and the importance of that? And did the staff see a noticeable difference in the abilities of children? It would be useful to hear if developmentally you found that some of, or all of the children, in fact, started to thrive in areas that perhaps they weren't previously as strong.
Yes, I think definitely parent communication is, you know, key, and I think with the amount of involvement we had with parents, so when we were developing our forest schools through this centre, we had, you know, a workshop day for them to come in. It was the same when we introduced playing pedals. It was workshops, so parents were invited in. We talked about it. Our curriculum evening. We gave out information. We put it on newsletters. You know, we were using online journals, so we could record videos and things like that to put on for parents to see the types of experience. And obviously with the stay in place, we had them in, so we had real parent buy-in for that. And when we were doing our forest schools, having the forest schools volunteers, so parents could come along and see what that looked like within an area, because obviously when you're taking children out into a wooded area, parents have some concerns in terms of the risk around that, where it is, you know, how safe is that environment, how is that being managed. So really sharing, you know, like your handbooks that go along with that, your risk assessments, you know, to reassure parents, and then moving on to, why don't you come and see some of the experiences that the children are getting, whether it's in forest schools or within our garden setting where our children are using real tools. Come and see what they're doing, come and look at how the staff manage that, and come and see the learning that's coming from that. And you can really demonstrate that through your learning journals as well. So I suppose for some of our children that did just want to be outdoors all day, it really helped us assess where they are by doing these big projects with them. And they were totally involved in, what do you think we should do at the garden? What do you think we should add? They would vote for, we put a big pirate ship in the middle of the playground, but they wanted an ocean round it. So we bought the recycled rubber, and we really worked with them in terms of the plans that we put in place. When it came to the wildflower garden, came from an interest of like insects and things like that, and how could we care for our animals. And we did obviously your bird feeders and all that kind of stuff, but then we started to think about like the insects, and they looked more into that with the RSPB in, talking to them about birds in winter and all that kind of thing. They did the bird watching in winter, where they learnt more about birds. And then we moved on and did the development of the wildflower garden. But for that, we had lots of people involved in that, lots of parents coming in, lots of parents donating wood, because they built the entire fenced garden, which was amazing because they did it from start to finish. So they learnt about, you know, cause and effect, because they were mixing cement. They were looking at that process of what that would look like, what it was actually used for. They were measuring out their posts, and they knew the posts had to be the same size. They were using all the you know, saws. They were using vices. You know, they were developing really all their mathematical skills, their mathematical language, and they were developing their fine motor skills. There wasn't a bit of that fence that hung the right way, but it was all of their work. You know, every panel was hammered in by them. They painted it, and it was multicoloured rainbow colours. But actually the achievement that the children felt from their work as well, because they wanted to show that when we had any kind of parent events or anything that was happening in the nursery, you know, the wee ones that were involved in that were outside showing that. And we did lots of different things. That, you know, the flower garden's just an example. And there is some photographs of some of the other stuff that we did, because we had a huge project on Seed to Table where children were basically growing their own snack, and we had a mini allotment outside. And again, it's a concrete playground, so it was raised beds that we did that in, and each pot was for each group, and they grew their own. And then they'd come in and they would make soup. We grew a pumpkin patch and they made pumpkin soup. There was lots of herbs being grown, and there's so much learning in that in terms of vocabulary, children's understanding of that process of growing things and how to care for them and what they need. And, you know, there was lots of really interesting discussion around, you know, STEM, and it was just really, really wonderful to watch, actually, and for the children then to be able to produce things that they can eat. I mean, they grew green beans. There was never a green bean coming into snack, because when they were outside, they were all just eating the green beans that were growing on the vine. So yeah, it was that was, you know, another part of that kind of 3-year project that ran on in that particular setting. But I think that's probably where, you know, the passion for STEM and what you could achieve in a building that, you know, or in a garden that is not purpose built. You know, the free flow access was difficult there as well. You know, getting staff on board was challenging to start off with, but the amount of progress that we made from supporting our staff as well, and it's really staff being able to see the management being involved in that too. So for our site clearance for our forest schools, we were all down there, all clearing the site. When we were working things in the garden, we always the day we were out in the garden supporting. And if, you know, there was staff absence, or, you know, there was something particularly going on outside that was being developed, you know, I would go out and make sure that I was involved in that. I knew what was happening. I was supporting staff in terms of how do we ensure that we encompass the curriculum in this, what is it we were going to be focusing on, and really supporting staff in their planning, the recording and observations of children's learning, and that as well. So I think, you know, management involvement is really key in terms of your staff feeling that you're involved in this as well, and that you know exactly what's going on, and that you're celebrating that with your staff too. And that is something that I had to learn along the way, was really, you know, go back to praise staff in terms of the great job that they were doing. So that was my local authority setting, my first one. And then thereafter that I moved to an avant-garde new build, which only opened in May. Due to COVID, there was delays there, and that was a vision of outdoor learning. It's free flow, indoor, outdoor access. So we've got playrooms within the building for 2 to 3s and for our 3 to 5s, but we've got a massive courtyard that the rooms feed out of. The building almost looks like a big barn. There's a massive courtyard which is roofed and protected from like rain, snow, the elements, but there's fresh air all the way around just because of the open slats of the barn-like structure. We've got a roof terrace upstairs, which again is open to all the fresh air that children get. They just wouldn't get wet there. And then we've got a large outdoor space with different areas that we can offer that broad, balanced curriculum. And it's not the same opportunities. We don't try to offer the same opportunities outdoors as we do indoors. We access the curriculum and cover all layers of the curriculum just in a different way. And in there we've got a small forest area. We've already started to work on building like an outdoor woodwork area. We've applied for funding to the Forestry Commission, and we get sapling trees delivered that are all going to enclose that to make it a kind of private space in there that children can go to. We've got an area where we've developed, you know, den building and an art area, and there's construction. We've got mud kitchen, all the things that that lots of people will have within their centre, but it has been really purpose built for that outdoor learning. And I suppose in terms of times of COVID and things like that, you know, everybody's moved on with outdoor learning because of, you know, just that need for children to be outdoors to try and stop the spread of infection, things like that. So everybody, I think, will have started to move on in terms of outdoor learning in children and how they access that.
Do you find, Kirsty, that because you have been so involved in outdoor learning and you've been really passionate in trying to promote it in each of the settings that you've worked in, and you've developed a very robust and really well-rounded understanding of it, do you find that having to adapt really quickly to that outdoor play environment because of COVID made it easier for you to lead and support your team, especially if it was a new team and people maybe hadn't been on that journey with you? Do you find that as a leader you felt in a better position to really try and promote this and really encourage it for staff and for parents?
Yeah, I suppose when I went to my first local authority, it was that time of transformational change for the 600 hours. There was four remaining members of staff, so 4 original staff, and then there was 18 new members of staff, including myself. So it was a fairly new team, but the 4 members of staff that were there originally and were used to the way things were done, they probably found that a bit more challenging. And then obviously all the other staff that came in, it was all new to them. So in some ways, I suppose it was easier because you're starting off with a new ethos, but the 4 members of staff, it took a wee bit longer to get them fully on board. But I think potentially, especially my avant-garde build, we started off, I was having team meetings with my staff before they'd even stepped. I hadn't met any of them, but because they were all spread across the authority working in different centres, it was bringing them together and really working on what is our centre, this is what our centre looks like, and showing them plans and photographs as it developed. They knew that it was going to be an indoor-outdoor concept with predominantly outdoors. So I suppose when you've got that type of building, that's much easier to get your staff on board as with a traditional setting. However, I think providing your staff with training. So I've done lots of training before I opened my new centre with my staff in terms of what outdoor learning would look like, what opportunities that we're hoping to provide for children, gathering who's got an interest in outdoors, who's got experience in it, who's got a passion for it, and then, I've had a member of staff in my new build that is, she's very passionate about outdoors, that she says to me, it makes me want to cry when you ask me to come in. So having somebody like that, is a total asset, and we really utilise that, and she is our lead outdoors. But she really brings along the other staff as well when they're outdoors, and gives them ideas and shares that professional dialogue about the learning opportunities that children can have outside, along with us, because we make sure that we're outside as well, just to look at the development of the area, because obviously we've went into a completely blank canvas and the staff have really been involved, and we've now that we've opened, the children involved as well in terms of what do we want out here, what would you like to play with, making sure we've got lots of loose parts and things like that are open-ended that children can explore with. We've got obviously the forest area up at the top of our garden that children can access, and we really use the natural materials that we've got out there in terms of just children having different opportunities outside. So it's like having art that we do at Paperless, exploring natural materials using like bark and leaves. We use berries for painting, different things like that. Maths to woodwork, as I spoke about, stone collecting, treasures and scavenger hunts. And with water play, we don't have a water tray outside. We've got puddles and we've got drain pipes, and we explore that in just different ways from which we would outside. But in terms of getting staff on board, which was your original question, I think if you are passionate about it, and I think if you can go in and you can support your staff in terms of what the curriculum might look like out there, that goes a long way in terms of building your confidence within your team. And again, if you've got somebody that does have experience or is passionate about some area, I've got one member of staff that is completely green-fingered. She's not passionate about being outside in all weathers, but she's got great understanding. We really utilise that in terms of developing our mini allotments and the seed to table aspects that we want to introduce within our centre. So it's really getting to know your staff and their skills and really utilising that. And for staff that are interested but maybe don't have that confidence, it's providing the training for that. So we've got lots of staff that were really, really keen on the woodwork aspects that I've talked about and showed them pictures of my previous centres, and talked about the vision for how children can learn through that media, and they've really bought into that, so much so that I applied for a STEM grant from Education Scotland this year, and I got a £3,000 grant, but we had to do it where it was affecting our wider school community. So we're actually doing it with 3 of our link schools and 3 of our sister nurseries within that locality, and really what we're developing is STEM across, starting to train our staff further afield, not just within our centre. And we've built that around transitions, so our children that will be transitioning to these schools are getting to meet other centres children prior to going to transition to schools. They're doing woodwork together, they're doing some outdoor learning together, and we did woodwork training right across all the centres and schools that were involved in that, and we're having a real focus on that just to try and develop STEM and woodwork further. And it's so successful now that the schools that are involved that maybe don't have woodwork materials or whatever, that they're starting to ask for lists. Can we get the list so that we can start to invest in that, because it's something that we feel would benefit their entire school community, not just for transitions. So it's really developing these type of learning approaches from early years right into school, and that's been a great opportunity this year. It helped us as a standalone centre new to the community build those relationships with our sister centres and things, and we found that really beneficial as well, and the parents are really on board with that as well, because they understand that we're a new centre that are not attached to a school. I mean, the only one in that area that isn't, but we've used this kind of STEM approach to try and build relationships and give the children the same opportunities that they would have if they were in another centre.
I think this is probably a good time to reflect on some of the points that you've mentioned. You've just touched on using outdoor learning in transitions. This may be something that people wouldn't necessarily make that connection between. However, I do think it highlights the endless opportunities that outdoor learning presents and how it can be used to bring that wider learning community together and make the transition process easier and less daunting for everybody who's involved in it, children and their families and the staff. But it also opens up a whole other world of opportunities for children that simply aren't possible in an indoor learning environment. And why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you give children the chance to learn in and embrace the environment that they're passionate about, they thrive in, and that they really, really enjoy? And particularly in the case of transitions, it's really interesting to hear how this has helped with that big milestone event of moving from nursery into primary school. And as I mentioned at the start, it's evident that outdoor learning and STEM are areas that you are incredibly passionate about. And over the course of your career, you have been on your own journey to really develop and build your skills and your knowledge base around these areas, and latterly sharing that knowledge and passion for this with the staff and families who each have been on a small part of this journey with you. And as much as it has been just a small part that they've shared with you, you've evidenced and you've spoke so well about continuing to develop that knowledge and sharing it with your staff, but also leading and encouraging a team to develop and enhance their own outdoor learning practice, but also how you've been successful in bringing parents on that journey with you and really demonstrating to them just how important that outdoor learning and STEM is within the early years curriculum. So it's clear that you have done a phenomenal amount of work, and you've worked really hard with your staff teams over the years to really embed that outdoor learning culture in each of the settings that you've worked within, and as a result have been able to offer children with some really wonderful learning experiences. And that, again, I think what's been really refreshing to hear and what's been really important to hear is that outdoor learning or outdoor play is so much more than putting on a puddle suit, some welly boots and finding muddy puddles to jump in. You've articulated so well the importance and how it's an invaluable part of that early years curriculum, and being part of that culture change and being part of that development and part of that learning experience for so many young people across the authority is something that you should be really, really proud of. And we would encourage anyone with any questions about outdoor learning to come forward and ask them, to reach out and to find out what they can do in their own setting or to develop their skills. You've mentioned some of the training opportunities and funding that you've utilised over the years, and I think you are a really good contact for anyone interested in developing their practice, and we've put a note of your contact details alongside the recording should anybody wish to get in touch with any questions, or if anybody's looking for more information, they can do so. But really all that's left for me to say is just a massive thank you for what has been a really interesting discussion, and I hope people listening to it take away some good learning from it and some good ideas on what they can do within their own settings. And I'm absolutely confident that even though you've moved out of setting into the Central Early Years team, that the support, commitment and dedication to embedding outdoor learning in your authority won't diminish. And I'm sure we'll be reading or we will to see some more of the wonderful work that's happened within your area fairly soon. But
I think access and training can sometimes be a barrier because it can be expensive and things like that, and even developing your area can be difficult, your environment. And I think just applying for funding and being aware of that. So, there was the Setting of Innovation funding, there's Food for Thought funding, which I've accessed before. Local building companies, if you've got, building companies that are, building houses or anything nearby, we've approached them and said, we're basically raising your new workforce. Will you support us and put in applications? And they, we were successful in getting, workbenches, tools and things like that, just from approaching some companies, and all they wanted was to have a photo opportunity on their building site with some children and things like that. So it's worth thinking about that. Some of the community grants that are out there as well. Forestry Commission, if you're wanting to plant any trees and things like that. And also fundraising with your families. If your families know and are involved with your fundraising for, you're much more likely to get them on board and really, working hard to bring in the money for purchasing whatever it is that you want to develop, whether it's your area or outdoor clothing or, whatever that might be. There is lots of opportunities in being able to kind of access and raise funds. It does take a wee bit of work with some of these applications, but it is worth it. And definitely in terms of driving forward your improvements and things like that, it's definitely worthwhile exploring that, because I do realise that can be, a bit of a barrier and a challenge if the funding's not there for you to be able to do what you want to do. And also just that recycling and, approaching companies. We've approached companies for paint, with all the tyres delivered, that type of thing. There's lots of companies out there that are willing to do it, and parents that are handy as well, coming in and help you build, a water wall or whatever it is. It's putting it out there and saying there's an end to it, come and help us. Obviously just now with COVID that can be difficult, but getting donations and things like that really helps in terms of even if you're just developing your largeless parks or something like that. There's small things that you can do to start to develop your areas.
Thank you for listening. If you have any questions about the topics discussed in this recording, or if you're interested in taking part in the series, please do not hesitate to get in touch. More details and contact information can be found on the Improvement Service website.